Hello, my name is Michael Hayworth. This slide presentation will cover the topic of school suspensions and expulsions. As defined by the Children's Law Center of Massachusetts, suspension and expulsion are disciplinary sanctions imposed for prohibited conduct committed by a student. The rules governing suspensions and expulsions can vary depending on the school district. Two different districts could have very different rules. Within a district, the rules may also vary from school to school. What the rules are at an elementary school, for example, may be different from the rules at a high school, even if the schools are located in the same district. All school districts will have a school discipline code which must be followed. The code will state the consequences if a rule is broken. In most schools, if a student violates a rule, the student can be suspended. Suspensions can also be imposed if a student does something which endangers the safety of others. This can sometimes include activities that don't happen at school. Making a threat against the school, students, or teachers can also result in a suspension. The school district will have a rule outlining the maximum time for which a suspension can be imposed. Typically, it is no more than 5 days unless the suspension is the first step towards expulsion. In such incidences, the suspension may be for a longer time. Suspensions may be either in school or out of school. The reason for the suspension will typically determine which type is imposed. An in-school suspension would be one in which the child would be removed from their regular classes but remain on the school campus. An out-of-school suspension would involve the student being removed from the campus and serving their time at home. A reason must be provided by the school when a student is suspended. The student and parents or guardians must be informed. Special education students must be treated differently, and all rules and provisions set forth by IDEA must be upheld. The special education student cannot be suspended or expelled if the disability caused the behavior that it would have been used to justify the suspension or expulsion. A determination must be made on whether the behavior is a result of the disability or not. A suspension can be enforced if the behavior is determined to not be a result of the disability. A suspension may be appealed. Typically, the appeal is done by holding a conference with an individual appointed by the school district. The appeal may result in the suspension being revoked and removed from the student's record, or the appeal may result in the suspension being upheld. Expulsions are an extreme step to take. Expulsions remove the student from public education for the period of time stated in the expulsion. Expulsions may be for one semester or for an entire school year. Suspensions and expulsions can be challenged in court. Students possess certain rights that allow for them to request a court hearing. The hearing is held before the school board. The student may have an attorney present. The school will present its information to the board as to why the suspension or expulsion occurred. The student and his attorney will then try to provide a defense as to why the school was wrong. The school board then makes a decision. Students have rights when it comes to suspensions and expulsions. The school administrator must inform the student and parents or guardians in writing the reason for the suspension. A written notice must also be provided stating the time and place of a hearing. All written notices must be in the primary language of the student and parents. A student has the right to have a lawyer or advocate present at any hearing held. Students have the right to have witnesses heard and evidence reviewed at the hearing. A student has a right to access the evidence and his or her school record. The student has the right to have his or her case heard by an impartial individual. The student also has the right to review any record of the hearing. The student has the right to have the decision provided in writing and the right to appeal. Goss v. Lopez was a Supreme Court case dealing with suspension. The Columbus, Ohio public school system was accused of suspending 75 students without a hearing after a fight in the school cafeteria. Dwight Lopez was one of the students, and he claimed he did not participate in the fight and was suspended without being able to state his case at a hearing. The court sided with Mr. Lopez, however the school appealed that decision. The Supreme Court upheld the decision, stating that under the 14th Amendment, people cannot be denied liberty without due process. The school's argument was that due process only applies if the student suffered a severe loss, which a 10-day suspension was not. The court upheld the decision in favor of the students. ISLIC Standards 3 and 5 pertain to the issue of student suspension and expulsion. Standard 3 calls for an education leader to promote the safety and welfare of students and staff. When a student does something to threaten that safety and welfare, a suspension or expulsion may be warranted. Standard 5 calls for an educational leader to ensure a system of accountability. Rules fall under this system, and if rules are broken, a suspension or expulsion might be necessary. The following references were used to prepare this presentation. Thank you. This concludes this presentation on school suspension and expulsion.